what Dan was saying about the first sale you have to make is on yourself. Can you speak about that, to what that means? Because until someone sells themselves on the fact that they're a salesperson, they're not going to do well with this. And the people that I know that are not great marketers, they have this issue with marketing, like it's a bad thing. And until you can give them a mental enema and get them to understand, no, it's a great thing, they suck at marketing. So.
Well, first of all, I wanted that definition. Probably the greatest sales or marketing pitch that I can remember in my lifetime, because I was involved in advertising at a fairly high level back in the 70s. But Schaefer Beer back in the 60s came out with this great line, which was Schaefer, the one beer to have when you're having more than one. And I thought it was the perfect, because there's total intellectual engagement and total emotional commitment in about five. I mean, they totally know their target market. How many of you feel they totally know their target market? The one beer to have when you're having more than one? I mean, how many of you, they've got it? So I grew up, as I said, I went to college near Annapolis. This has nothing to do with this question, but there was a little brewery in Baltimore, and it was called Schmidt's Brewery, and it's too bad it didn't happen during the age of the internet, because they would have gone viral with us. But as good as Schaefer was, I thought Schmidt's really was better, because Schmidt's was the one beer to have when you're having more than 6. And I just think, that they really know their target market, emotionally. But what was your question?
No, I almost wanted to tell the Schlitz beer story. Maybe I will. We'll see if we have enough time. From selling yourself on it, because it's one thing to go out and persuade other people, but if you are not sold. See, the reason I think people dislike selling is they're like, I hate selling, because they feel like they're talking people into something that they're not committed to. They don't even believe. And I would hate that too. If I was in a position where I had to go sell someone and lie for a living in order to make, who would like that? I mean, that's ridiculous. So
yeah, it's really interesting, because it really relates to the whole issue of entrepreneurism. And I've had a long span now. I'm going on 4 decades of dealing directly with entrepreneurs, and people are always asking me, what's the difference between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs, and then really successful entrepreneurs and people who aren't really successful. And the more I go along, it's just that the really, really successful entrepreneurs have a phenomenal internal ability to sell themselves on everything they do before they do it. And other people don't. They just don't have an ability to sell themselves. And so, and that's why they make such great salesperson, because before I would, your name is?
Hey, John.
John, before I would approach John, I would sell myself on why I wanted to sell something to John. And what that means is that I freed up my mind completely now, just to kind of try to figure out what John really would like to have. And I'm not sitting there conflicted inside myself. Most people are trying to sell with an internal sense of conflict. I don't know if this is really good, what happens with this? And they've got all this conflict going on. So more and more, as I've gone along and tried to get better as an entrepreneur, I made rule number 1, I never sell unless I'm sold. Never sell unless I'm sold. No. And that has much wider applications just than being in marketing or being in selling. And we were talking yesterday, because Joe and I are starting a podcast of our own, which is called Genius Network, which will be up and on the iTunes. It's iTunes pretty soon. But he asked me, what's contributing to the overwhelm that people are experiencing in modern life. There's a lot of overwhelm. People are just overwhelmed. It's just coming at people. And I said it's because they are over-obligated. And what over-obligated means is you keep giving promises to things that you're not sold on. So people say you're overcommitted. No, the problem isn't that they're over-obligated and under-committed. So they're obligated to do things, but they're not actually committed to do the things that they're obligated to. And that creates enormous mess inside your mind. How many of you have had that experience of being obligated to something that you were actually weren't committed to? You know, it's kind of being the executor of someone's estate who you really hated during their lifetime. You know, you get it. And so to make your life really simple, and this really contributes enormously to your ability to market and sell, is keep, and just have this rule: I'm not going to say a word, and I'm not going to try to sell anything that in my own mind I'm not completely sold on. And when you're completely sold, other people pick up on that. They just pick up on it. They just, they're just like, got it, totally sold. You know, how many of you can tell when somebody else is totally sold on what they're doing? Yeah.
And you may not even be trying to sell, and it just happens.
Yeah, it just happens. You know, we can just pick that up. You know.
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to a group of my entrepreneurs, and I said, when Vince Lombardi, I mean, some of you are young in the group, so you may not remember who Vince Lombardi was, but when he took over a very, very bad football team, the Green Bay Packers, back in the late 50s, he walked in the locker room, and this is what he said, the first thing he said. He says, gentlemen, there's two things that are true. We're going to win a National Football League championship, and only half of you are going to be there when we do it. Which half are you in? And he was just totally sold. And so they picked it up in the first 15 minutes of being with him that he was totally sold. So when he was sold, they were sold.
Yeah, see, and it's kind of like this room. Like a year from now, there's going to be millions of dollars made. Half the group, and the others are going to be broke. Which half are you?
The other half are going to be buying.
You're going to listen to my shit online or not?
Yeah, but when you see, and a lot of this, really has to do with just a conversation that's going on with yourself. You know, it's not really your conversation with the world, it's your conversation with yourself. Once the conversation with yourself is a really good one, then the conversation between you and the world is a really good one.
Yeah. That is great. Very good. This will kind of be like the lectures series of the I Love Marketing meetup group, just because it's not often that Dan would be able to come and do this. We can take a few minutes if anyone has any specific questions for Dan about anything that this has opened your mind up to. Does anyone have a question for Dan about entrepreneurism, multiplying and growing your business? Yes, Kathy.
In the beginning, when you were talking about get way back up there, about the 5 parts of a discussion and what make it effective and amazing, you mentioned the direction that it had to take. A lot of times discussions end up in tangents. Would you basically say those are not productive because there's, well, what I got from what you said is that discussions should have, in essence, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a point to them that we can bring back and start again and to build on. You kind of kept tangents out of that and said shouldn't go that way, or I would consider it exclusive to what you said.
Yeah.
That's not quite a good question.
No, it's a great question.
No, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Only stupid people that ask questions.
That's not Kathy.
I'm just kidding.
I'm just thinking because I hadn't thought about the question before, so I'm thinking through the question. I think that there has to be kind of an agreement at the beginning of the meeting on what's going to be talked about, because you can't necessarily talk about everything, okay? And that's why I think that if you have a great idea, there's just enormous dimensions to a great idea, and people can join their experiences. So I would draw a distinction between tangents and dimensions.
Okay.
That people can add a lot from different dimensions to a central focus, and they, the questions and do it. But everybody gets a sense that something in the center is being strengthened.
Okay.
And when it's tangents, everybody gets a sense that something in the center is being weakened.
Okay.
And you get better at that. You get better at that. And it's and there's a looping back, and that's part of the role of having the leader of the discussion. Let's just loop back now. You said this, and you said this, and how does it relate back to what we were talking about at the beginning? And then everybody's back to the center again, and that's why you need a good facilitator. Yeah.
We'll do 2 more questions, so just 2. Let's go, Billy in the back.
On the selling that I'm told on being a seller, how do I increase my skill level other than just practicing, selling myself? Is there like book studies or books out there that I can read and study and grow this capability within myself?
Well, I actually have a process that I go through for myself, which I'd be happy to share, of how I sell myself. Like, for example, and I do this about 20 times a week. Anything important that I'm going into, an important meeting, if I'm recording something, I do workshops, so I do all-day workshops, speeches, anything that I do, I go through this thinking process, and I'd be happy to share it. I'm not sure that. Well, you'll decide whether it's valuable or not. Anyway, but the first thing is, what's the purpose? Why am I doing this? And purpose is always the why. Why am I doing this? And I write it down. So this is a process that I always write down on a sheet of paper. What's the purpose of what I'm doing here? And what the purpose is, what am I trying to accomplish? If I go into a meeting, what am I trying to accomplish in the meeting? If I'm doing a sales call, what am I trying to accomplish on the sales call? Second thing is, what is the importance? What difference will it make, this event? Third thing is, what's the ideal outcome? And that goes back to your intellectually engaging yourself with a future desirable result. That's good for you. Okay, so a lot of people go in not really clear what they want to get out of it, and well, let's just see what happens. Well, guess what? Anything can happen. I just want to have happen what I want to have happen. And then here's 2 things which are really interesting, and I think this may be the 2 most important parts. And this takes about a half hour, by the way. This thinking process, by the time you think it through, takes about a half hour. And the tool we call in Strategic Coach is called the impact filter. What kind of impact are you really looking for? But the next 2 questions are really, for me, the most interesting one. And what's the worst that can happen if I really blow it? If I really blow this situation, what's the worst that can happen? And the reason is that I believe that there are 2 things necessary for great performance. One of them is fear, and the other one is excitement. And when you actually tell yourself what it would look like if you blow it, you scare yourself. And I think it's very important for high performance in any situation to scare yourself that if you don't pull this off, there's consequences, and and I always tell myself, if I blow this, this is horrible. And then the other thing, what's the best that can happen if I do the best job ever? What happens if I do the best job ever here? And then I'm very excited about that. So I've got 2 grades of fuel in my gas tank. I've got fear and I've got excitement, and that's that you really get great combustion out of fear and excitement. Okay, really exposed. And now my attention is totally there, but the other thing, now I've moved down to emotional commitment. Okay, so the first 3 things, the purpose, the importance, and the ideal outcome, is intellectual engagement. I'm totally engaged with the result. But now when I move down to what's the worst that can happen, what's the best can happen, now I'm operating on the level of emotion. And I'll enter into situations, or people will say, could you do this? And I'll get halfway down. And by the time I get to ideal outcome, I say, you know, it's not worth doing. So it saves me going into the situation. I've unsold myself. I've unsold myself. And I unsell myself from a lot of situations. I say, nah, it's not worth it. You know, it's just not worth the bother. And that's where all your wisdom comes to the front. You see, you have a massive amount of experience about what's worked and what hasn't worked in your past life. But what's happened is that you don't always remember it when you're making a decision. And what this exercise does, it brings the full weight of all the wisdom that you've had in your life right to, and you say, oh, I'm not getting involved in that. Out of here. Then the final thing is, what is the success criteria? If this is really a success, what has to be true? This has to be true, this has to be true, and those are all measurables. They have to be measurables. You know, I make a sale for $5,000. I make a sale for $9,000. You know, I do this, I do this, I do this, and then what you're doing is you're creating a measuring stick in your mind that that when you hit success, you'll know it. You know, there's actually a measurement in your mind. Human brain loves measurement, and there's two ways that the human brain measures. It's either a number attached to it. Human brain loves numbers, or it's an event that either happened or it did not happen. Sale either happened or sale did not happen. And the human brain just loves situations where there's numbers or events because it's measurable. And when it happens, you know it's happened. If it didn't happen, you know it didn't happen. So that's what I do. Is Billy, is it?
Yes.
Billy, so that's what I do. Now, that seems like a lot of work, doesn't it?
Well, if it improves it, I'm willing to try.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, that's really an important thing that you said, because there's a lot of smart people that I've taught this to that say, you know, I can do it without going through the process. And I teach this stuff, and I've taught it over the years, and I always do it. Okay, and I'm ADD, you know, and I don't like forms, and I don't like, you know, doing that sort of thing, but it protects me so much, and the results are always so good.
Yeah.
That I just always do it. You know, it's like if you want to be physically fit, you have to go to the gym and you have to go through the routine. You know, you may not like to do it, but you can't do it any other way. And this really protects me. And I'll tell you, there's two great payoffs. One is that, generally speaking, when you go through this process, the results that you actually get as a result of this are either as good or better than you've actually put down. Or you'll say no to the situation and save yourself an enormous amount of time and aggravation. And I have people that said that it's as much valuable for the things that I don't get into as for the things that I pull up.
Yeah.
You know, how many of you in your life that if you had done this in a half hour before you got involved in certain relationships and you didn't get it, it would have saved you a lot of bother. Maybe a lot of money. Maybe a lot of money. So it seems like fairly simple stuff, but the life that we live in the 21st century, the main problem is over choice. We have too much choice. There's too many things that we can get into. So one of the great abilities that we really have to develop is the ability to discriminate between just what we want to do and everything else that we don't want to do. And that has an enormous amount to do with who you sell to and why you're selling to them, you know, and who you want to get involved with. You know, a lot of you have customers that are actually costing you money. How many of you have customers that are actually costing you money? Yeah, yeah. So after a while, you have to make a discrimination. You know, I just can't have this kind of customer. I need a better customer.
Yeah, it's really like if everyone even went through that process every time they're going to get on some social media site, would they really, you know, I mean, what is the impact? What are you looking for? And to show you a little bit of what, you know, Dan calls front stage and backstage, you know, little backstage thing, I did...
See, Joe did one of these before tonight's session. This is what it actually looks like.
Yeah, so me and Kevin were eating a couple hours before this meeting started. So we called this the I Love Marketing Meetup group for tonight. The purpose, continue education of I Love Marketing and instill the power of the mastermind. Importance, if Dan does a great speech on the value of I Love Marketing and in-person discussions, we can have this viewed all over the world. Ideal outcome, happy group, great. You guys happy?
Yes.
Great discussions. They get to hear the brilliance of Dan Sullivan, and we have a powerful video to use on I Love Marketing and the in the leaders meetup groups. Worst result if we don't take action. We do a mediocre meeting and don't capture the video properly. If you do take action, the people attending realize how lucky they are to have this free training, and they want to tell everyone about it. Successful criteria: leave them in awe of the power of the group. Does anyone feel that way?
Yeah.
Okay, good. 30 to 45 minute killer video at Dan. Sell whatever we can to the group. That means pitch you guys something. And so what I meant by sell meaning getting all of you intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for you, and then getting you to emotionally, and in this case financially, commit to take action. And so we have a couple of items of Dan's that I think would be so beneficial to all of you. So I had some things that I've gotten here from Strategic Coach, and so I'll talk about those as we end. And then in spite of it being beyond capacity, meaning the amount of people that were registered, we make it work, which it seems we have. And the video quality is very good. Kevin wrote, people are engaged to download the podcast and share ilovemarketing.com. A couple people share their experience from what they learned. And Dan Sullivan sees the power of the I Love Marketing meetup group, because Dan already has experienced I Love Marketing. This is the first time Dan's actually participated at an I Love Marketing meetup group. So just by doing that thinking, how long do you think it took us to do this?
Maybe 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yeah. But what it does, and so what Dan just went through that process, I did that before my, how many of you, has anyone seen my speech at Glazer Kennedy? How many of you are Dan Kennedy fans? Anyone? You saw my speech, yeah. That was the highest close in Glazer Kennedy history, and I did a impact filter, and I went through this whole process right before that. And as a result of doing that speech, then because of that, it turned into Dean Graziosi doing the same process a week later. I just got back from Atlanta. John Benson did $100,000 in sales off of it. I mean, that one starting point has created over $1 million in revenue, and it's just because I thought it through. You think it through, and so it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It helps.
There's a guy by the name of Daniel Kellman, and he won the Nobel Prize, I think, in 2003. And it was really interesting because he's the only economist to ever win the Nobel Prize for economics. And what he won it for was his recognition that in the world, the people who really do things are fast thinkers. But the things that actually get things done right are slow thinking. So how many of you are fast thinkers? You really respond very, very quickly to situations. But if you're just always continually a fast thinker, you'll fast think this, and then you'll fast think that, and then you'll fast think this, and then you'll fast think this. But at the bottom of it, nothing really gets done really, really well. There's not the follow through. So what I've learned working with people who are probably clinically diagnosable as ADD is that if I can get them to say what it is that they really want, but then go through a 10, 15, 20-minute thinking process, they're combining both fast thinking and slow thinking. And the result is really dynamite. If you can get fast thinkers to think slow, at least for a short period of time, they produce dynamite results. And the reason is their natural tendency is to take action anyway, but then to actually think through whether it's worth taking action, and if they're going to take action, what are the results actually going to be, is really dynamite. So I think this... You had one more question. Somebody else.
I think it was a toss-up between these two because you raised your hands most. So
you got it.
You guys want to fight over it? Go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is my first time to group, so I should introduce myself or market myself. I'm Adrian. Actually, I thought we were gonna go out for chips and salsa. So I've gotten a lot. So
you still can.
I've gotten a lot. I just moved here actually, but. Network marketing has recycled in my life over and over again. I had a negative outcome in the past when I was younger, and I just wanted your take on network marketing, or
You want me to go with that one, or you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, you have more
Well,
experience with it.
look, I mean, I'm biased, okay, because there's a lot of great products and services that are sold through network marketing, and statistically, more millionaires, are created out of network marketing than almost any other, new startup venture. But at the same time, there is a massive number of people that, join network marketing companies under this belief that they're actually selling products and services, and what they're really selling is business opportunities. Because of the margins, you're really not in the and it has to be a consumable. You either have to pour it down the drain, down your throat, rub it on your body in order for it to be a good multi-level product, because people have to use the shit up, right? And so they buy more. And so the challenge I have with network marketing, not that it's not a good way to make money, most people just don't incorporate good direct response into it. So if you are going to get involved in the network marketing company, just use direct response, so you're not in the human behavior business where you're trying to get other people to recruit. I have more of I would much rather write a sales letter and just sell something and create the stuff myself versus paying, a bigger, cutting off margins because someone's already labeled it and set up a website and done all that stuff. So it's one of those sorts of things. The biggest challenge I have with it, though, is the weirdness factor of network marketing. They don't call it network marketing because people already have a negative connotation, but the reason is because, if you get a really diehard, they're like fanatical, they're like true believers, right? Eric Hoffer's book. Where like everyone is all of a sudden a prospect to recruit. You can't sit next to them without them, hey, let me tell you about a new opportunity. So there's that weirdness sort of factor about it, but more than anything is it's really not a front end sort of product. If you're a chiropractor and you already have an existing client base, and you want to sell some multi-level vitamins, you already have a built-in client base. But if you don't already have an existing client base and just trying to make money just selling the products or services, because what will typically happen with the pitch is you can make a lot of money. Everybody needs this chemical, and you just talk to other people that need the chemical or need this vitamin or need this whatever. The challenge is you're not selling, you're selling business opportunities. You're inventory loading people, and the product is about as important in a network marketing company as a strip pole is in a strip club. It's just there to facilitate selling biz ops. Does that make sense? Okay, so really, I don't know I could have spent 5 more minutes trying to have a softer way, but that's it. And so, having said that, I would much rather be the owner of a multi-level company versus one of the people in the downline. But you can build a tremendous business, and there are lots of multi-level companies that sell stuff, and if you are a good marketer, you can kick ass and take names. And what I would do if you are going to go into a multi-level company is use direct response in order to recruit robotically a downline, and then let them go out and annoy all their friends and relatives. It's probably not the answer you wanted, but I will tell you this. One of the greatest ways that people can become good marketers is get enrolled in either some sort of direct selling environment. Because if you have to go out and sell Kirby vacuums, if you have to go out and pitch people on multi-level, that teaches you something you are not going to learn any other way. And so, there's pros and cons to everything. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll do your question real quick if you got one.
Yeah, I understand this could launch a whole podcast by itself, but we talked earlier about how an entrepreneur or a small business owner can just be the person that is the motor. So what are the safeguards that you need to undergo initially as a startup to try to work against that and not let that happen?
So
it was where, I think it was along the lines that the business only exists if the owner is there. Is that what you were basically saying? Well, from my standpoint, like I made a conscious decision back in the 1980s that it wasn't going to be Dan Sullivan. The company wasn't going to be Dan Sullivan. So we called it Strategic Coach. And the reason is that down the road, I wanted to have a much greater impact on the world, and we couldn't do it. I mean, you can go the Tony Robbins route. Tony Tony is the product, you know, and but that's why he needs 5,000 people with the butts in the seat on a weekend. And if Tony's not there, they don't get the butts in the seat. So I've got clients who've been in Strategic Coach for 15 years, and I've never met them. You know, they've signed up for 15 years. I mean, Kathy, you know, I met Kathy. She signed up for the program. And the reason is that I wanted the entity and the message to be bigger than Dan Sullivan. And it wasn't about being close to Dan Sullivan and being inspired by Dan Sullivan. It was a way of thinking. It was like one of the tools that we just showed you. You master these tools. And guess what? The tools work whether you ever meet Dan Sullivan or not, or you've even heard about Dan Sullivan. The tools work. So I'm just interested in creating all sorts of stuff that work independently of me out in the world, and I get other people involved. So that's the real value creation proposition. The number one thing you have to do with your business is make sure the value creation proposition doesn't demand your presence.
And we did an episode on I Love Marketing on, you know, Dean talks about tiger-proof your business, because Dean Jackson had read an article, I don't know if it was in Fortune or Forbes years ago, and it was about the highest paid entertainers in... All right, Kim, you need to quit talking to him. I'm trying to answer this question. What do you guys think? Since I know you, I can blame you. It could have been his fault.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, what's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew, okay. Andrew. Yeah, so Dean Jackson, my partner on I Love Marketing, it's horrible. It feels like you're being scolded at school at a free freaking video game. But anyway, Dean was he read this article, and he had read at the time that at the Mirage, Siegfried and Roy had made $28 million that year doing their show, and they took, I think, 6 weeks off a year, but they did like 5 shows a week, or maybe even more than that, and they had 160 employees, and you know, blah blah blah. And then he read a little further, and the Blue Man Group that same year had made $68 million in revenue, and it was actually and he wrote up a whole newsletter about, you know, people don't go to the Blue Man Group to see, you know, they go to see blue men. They don't, you know, when they go to Siegfried and Roy, they don't go to see 2 guys in a tiger. They go to see Siegfried and Roy. And he said that, you know, the problem is that the Blue Man Group, when they started, there's only 3 of them in the original show, but there were 4 people that started because they all have part-time jobs, and in case one of them couldn't be there, they had to like sit in, and they just put makeup on, and they, you know, do their. How many of you have ever seen the Blue Man Group? I think it's fantastic. Try it on acid; it's great. I mean, you might want to edit that out. People may take it seriously. So, anyway, but basically. What happened, so he writes this newsletter about tiger-proof your business, because if something ever happens to Siegfried and Roy, you know, what happens to that? You know, the Blue Man Group is totally leverageable, and the only time that the Blue Man, the original founders, ever performed was when they were on the, you know, the Emmys awards or commercials. Other than that, there was something like, you know, 60 other Blue Men that, you know, knew how to do the moves. And so a month later, after he wrote that newsletter, Roy got mauled by a tiger, and all of a sudden the $28 million a year business gone, 160 employees lost their jobs, the Mirage Hotel drops in hotel stays, I mean literally gone. And it was the creepiest thing that he wrote that whole newsletter about tiger-proof your business. So the point is, you know, think of it that way. What I will say is, when you're starting out though, you know, you're going to need cash flow to fund whatever business you're in. So I mean, some people get so mired in oh, I have to set it up right, I have to set it up right, when I'm like, you know, just get out and sell something. Go out and start making some money, and, you know, work it out as you go along. I mean,
so what I'm hearing you saying is duplicate yourself, so you don't always have to be in that seat.
Right. Think about marketing. What is, like, if the best way that I've leveraged myself is I've never had to hire salespeople. Not that I don't have people that do sales, but marketing, the best sales, you know, if I had to rely on face-to-face selling in order to do what it is that I do, who knows what I'd be doing? I'd probably be broke, because I'm so distractible. But when I can replicate a free recorded message that can talk, see, marketing is the ultimate leverage. I mean, it really is. If you write a sales letter, you've duplicated yourself. If you put together a killer video sales letter, a free recorded message, a great website, a great opt-in process, an autoresponder series that communicates, I mean, that is the ultimate way to duplicate and replicate yourself. And there are certain things in my business, like 25K, if I got hit by a truck, you know, 25K wouldn't exist. There's other aspects of my business that would continue on without me. But as far as I'm concerned, if I get hit by a truck, I get hit by a truck. You know, so if my business is, you know, whatever. So a lot of these are much deeper questions. But you know, I would say the best place to start replicating and leveraging yourself is the marketing. In a lot of ways, I would say that's what Dan did with Strategic Coach. Dan has lots of books that are out there. Dan has other coaches, but what he did is he created processes, and other people can run those processes. And so whatever process you have that leads people to get to a bigger future, replicate that. And the way that you sell the process is through marketing. Great products, great services, great marketing. You know, marketing is what you say and who you say it to, and the more that you effectively build that, the better. So we need to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. What I'd like to do is speak to these two knowledge products. These are not just little books; they're actually a CD recording, and it's really well packaged. What I really love about Strategic Coach is they have really nice stuff, and so this is the gratitude principle, and this is. Two things that Dan says are the most important, and it's funny how you're right here and I'm talking about, here's what Dan says. One of the things I really... Did you get that on video too? So many good clips here, these are like sound bites. All right. The two things to protect as an entrepreneur that are really important are confidence and gratitude. That's what I've learned a lot from Dan. And you don't do anything well in life if you don't have confidence, or if you're just lucky, because some people can bumble their way through and be scared shitless and still do well. However, if you really want to put the odds in your favor, build and grow your confidence. Hopefully with I Love Marketing, we give you confidence in the area of marketing so you become more effective at it. So one of the things that Dan is brilliant at is helping entrepreneurs be more confident in all areas important to their entrepreneurial and personal lives. And so confidence is one, and the other is gratitude, because you can have all the money, all the relationships in the world, but if you don't have gratitude, then you can be a miserable human being. And so confidence and gratitude are critically important. And he has this is one of my favorite recordings from Dan. It's called The Gratitude Principle. And how many of you in the room are like, and I would consider myself in this sort of like self-help, personal development seminar junkies? Okay, one of the things, he says something in there, he talks about it, where he says you can read all of the books on happiness, and you can understand all of the things that make somebody unhappy. It doesn't automatically make you happy. You know, it's an internal thing that you develop. And the Dalai Lama said in The Art of Happiness that happiness is a skill. You can develop it. And so the gratitude principle isn't just ideas. He actually gives you a process on how to create more gratitude. Is there anything you would like to say about this?
Well, the usual attitude towards gratitude is that the whole action has to be initiated by someone else. In other words, they do something for you and then you're grateful. And first of all, that makes you very reactive. But not only that, you're sitting there waiting for people to do good things for you so that you can be grateful. And there's an interesting word that goes along with gratitude, and it's appreciation. And appreciation really has two meanings in our language. And one appreciation is sort of related to that you're grateful, you appreciate, and you're grateful. But the other one has to do with economics, which means to increase the value of. So when gold appreciates and when stocks appreciate, what it means is that the value has gone up. Okay. So what I did is that I took the meaning that appreciation increased the value of, so that you can be proactively grateful. In other words, you can just look at something and you can sit there and you can just appreciate it. And it doesn't have anything to do with what it's done for you. You just appreciate it for what it was, and it increases the value in your mind. And there's a wonderful book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. How many of you have read it? Yeah. So he spent 5 years in 2 Nazi death camps, essentially, death camps. And he survived, and he lost his wife, and he lost his members of his family. And he realized that what he had to do to combat what the Nazis were trying to do, first of all, they would destroy you as a human being. so that you no longer felt like a human being, and then they would just destroy your body. But the first thing they wanted to do was break your will and just destroy you as a human being. So there were a number of things that he did every day while he was in Auschwitz, and one of them is that he could see outside the window across, and there was a particular tree on a hill, and every day he would look at it and he said, God, that's a beautiful tree, and then he would follow it throughout the seasons. He was there for 5 years, so he would appreciate it in spring, summer, fall, and winter. And so he realized that there were a number of things that he had to do every day so the Nazis couldn't defeat him. And one of them is he had to be very thankful for something. And so he had to pick out something every day that he was really grateful about. Second thing is he had to find something funny every day. Now you can imagine it's probably the toughest circumstances that human beings have ever been to find something humorous. And the third thing is he had to do something that helped somebody that day. But you have to appreciate that in all three cases, those abilities were coming from within him. They were not being generated by the circumstances. So the Nazis were in control of the circumstances, but he was in control of his responses. So the more grateful you are, the more you can just look at the world around you, and you can assign greater and greater value to everything around you. Just there's a happiness factor that comes out. You just live in a world of appreciation and factors. So that's the, and I just see that, like people live with incredible wealth, they live with incredible advantages, and they're complaining. They have no appreciation, they have no gratitude, you know, and nothing will make them happy because it's not starting from the inside. Yeah, so that's
awesome.
that one.
Yep, so that's gratitude principle, and the other is the gap. I'll let you do the...
Yeah, so I'll give you the short version of this, and then you can listen to the longer version of this. How many of you remember a time when you were a kid and you went outside, and one day you noticed that there was a place where the sky and the ground met? How many of you know that there was a day when you noticed that? How many of you probably know? I mean, yeah. And we call that the horizon. Okay, so how many of you didn't take you too long to come to the realization that you couldn't get to the horizon? How many of you actually recognize that you couldn't get there? Okay, is there anyone who still bears deep emotional scars because you haven't been able to get to the horizon? Okay, so the horizon is actually what I call a mental structure. It's a structure in our brains, and it's learned because children who are born blind, when they regain their sight, don't have that. They don't have 3 dimensions. Three-dimensionality is actually a learned skill. They just have shapes. And then gradually their eyes began to see depth, and then at a certain point they learn this. And one of the things that the horizon line does is it allows us to orient ourselves in relationship to space. Space is one of our major dimensions, and this is the thing that allows us to actually orient ourselves to space. And you don't get any satisfaction out of the horizon. The only satisfaction you get is using the horizon to plot where you're going, but then turn around and see where you came from. And all the satisfaction comes from seeing where you came from. There's no emotional satisfaction because you're never going to get any closer to the horizon. Yeah, do it at night, doesn't matter, you can't get there. Do it fast, you can't get there, everything. We have the exact corresponding mental structure in our brains. It works exactly the same way, but it's in relationship to time. So we live in space and we live in time. And the time one, that's the exact correspondent to the horizon, is called the ideal. And whereas people don't have any emotional trouble at all with the horizon, they've got an enormous amount of emotional problems with the ideal, because they actually believe that they can get to the ideal, but you can no more get to the ideal than you can get to the horizon. And so the difference between you and the ideal is called the gap. So I call that the gap. And if you measure yourself by the ideal, you're always in the gap. And what the being in the gap means, you're always dissatisfied, you're always disappointed, you're always depressed, you will never get there. And people commit suicide over this. People take drugs over this. They can't get to the ideal. They can be incredible super performers. They can be the greatest performer in the world. They can win prizes, they can be declared greatest this or that, but inside of themselves they have no satisfaction because nothing they achieved actually matches up with the ideal. Because in the same way that the horizon moves away from us, the ideal also moves away from us. And the only purpose we have the ideal for is so that we can set goals in the foreground, and then as we move towards the goals, we look backwards and see where we came from. The only happiness comes from measuring backwards. There is no happiness in measuring forwards. That's the gap.
So if your future happiness has any semblance of importance, you might want to pick up the CD. What did you guys think of Dan?
Yeah.
Paul, how much are these?
Not in
Just name a price,
You
Paul.
have to-
24 each.
They're 24 each?
Okay.
Okay.
So 1 for 24, 2 for 50.
Yeah. So they're like $24.95, I think, right? Or are they
Yeah.
24 each?
And you get a
25
free
bucks
I
each.
Love Marketing sticker. 2 of them if you buy that.
All right, here's the deal. I just want to get Dan's wisdom and ideas into everyone's head. I mean, we don't like, look, if I was trying to make money out of the group here, I'd be pitching you guys like multi-$100 programs, and believe me, I know how to pitch multi-$100 programs. Yeah, we'll have, and if you do want one, if not, we take cash or credit cards. All right, so we have a few of them up there, and what I'd like all of you to do, if you would be so kind, is please give your feedback on the I Love Marketing meetup site, and also at ilovemarketing.com. That would be wonderful. There's a great interview that me and Dean Jackson did with Dan Sullivan on I Love Marketing. If you go to ilovemarketing.com, all you need to do is type in Dan Sullivan, and you will find the video there, and I think go ahead and watch that. Just like to get some positive focus takeaways of tonight's meeting, and then we will call it a wrap. Yes?
So I started in junior achievement when I was 2 years younger than I was allowed to be, but because my mother was one of the sponsoring companies, she worked at a company that did the sponsorship. So I started in, I think, 8th grade, and I had to study all about entrepreneurs and learn the whole system of creating a business and running a business and selling a business and go through that process. I was best in sales every year that I was in it, every quarter that I was in it, and so I won a trip. Anyway, knowing the definition, it wasn't until a year ago that I went to your talk, and so my business partner is, as you guys talked about him a little bit, but he was the creator of Z Health, and while I created alongside of him, it wasn't until a year ago that I went and you were talking about, entrepreneurs, and everybody in the room was talking about entrepreneurs, and I went, well, I'm not sure I should sign up for Coach because I'm not sure I'm an entrepreneur. And it wasn't until tonight when you said the definition again that I heard, because the only reason I joined last year is because I said, well, I'm not sure I'm an entrepreneur. And Marilyn walked up to me and she went, yes, you are. And then she explained to me why, but all I needed was the yes, you are. But it wasn't until tonight, a year later, after being in the program, that I heard the definition that I learned a long time ago. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was impressed when he talked about the breakout that's coming. How we're in the extra civil war, and people are really looking for leaders.
Yeah.
And if you can bring the passion that you have for leading and not limiting, which is what everybody else is doing, you feel that negative energy in our world right now, and especially our country, is everybody's just limiting. And if you can break through that and you can be the one that's on the forefront of that, then you can be the leader and you can show people a new way out.
That's right.
Thank you for the steps.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes. Oh, we also have some of my interviews. We'll give. I have an interview with Dan too. That anyone that gets one of these, we'll give you one of those interviews. And anyone else?
I didn't realize that the Chinese didn't have indoor plumbing.
I heard a real description about the United States. The United States has about 309 million people. And there's 309 million people in China that sort of correspond to the 309 million in the United States. and then there's 1 billion peasants. And
We have that too, but
and
we
they
keep
live
south of
they live on
Mexico.
basically about $1, $1 a day and everything like that. So they have they're kind of like where the United States was around 1850 as a country.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing is that the statistics about China growing, all the statistics are coming from a communist government. And I never believe a single figure that comes out of a communist government. United States, all the figures are checked by 1,500 different sources and independent organizations. It's not possible to lie about the U.S. economy. I mean, there's a bottom line that everybody knows about. But a country that controls all of its own figures and does all of its own counting, I mean, you wouldn't do that if you didn't. I mean, you were working with someone, but you never got to check the books. Yeah. The other thing is that their GDP is based on production and our GDP is based on sales.
Got you.
Yeah.
I actually went to St. John's as well, and it really changed.
Where'd you go? Santa Fe or
Santa Fe, yeah.
Santa Fe.
And it really changed the course of my life. And
that was like the leisure campus we always considered.
we did manage to crack a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was mostly Play-Doh and pot.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But it's a very unique structure.
It was, and it really changed the course of my life. And I just, I think it's great to acknowledge how much of an impact it had, and the idea that really, it all starts with a great idea. And it's not just, that institution, it's any. And if you're really, starting with a fantastic idea and letting it build from there, it can have profound impacts on people's lives. It's not just lip service, but, really changes the way they are as human beings.
Yeah, thanks.
Glad to have another St. Johnny who's an entrepreneur.
All right, anyone else? Any final comment?
Be sold. Be sold on yourself. Be certain. Be committed to the sell.
Yeah.
Then you're not really selling. You're sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And empowering.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. For every, my feeling is that you should have an equation like for every 5 minutes that you spend selling to other people, you should spend 5 minutes selling to yourself. Okay? And every time you sell yourself, you'll get a multiplier on the other side. It's the selling yourself that's actually the key to your selling others.
Yeah, Thomas Edison had that thing where he's like, if I had, an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes on coming up with the right questions and 5 minutes on the answers. And so part of it is asking yourself those questions.
It seems like accountability and attention management are what we need, because we have a lot of work to do before next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Dan, thank you.
Yeah,
pleasure. Thank you.
How about that, guys?
If anyone would like any information on Dan's program, The Strategic Coach, just go to strategiccoach.com. I would encourage you to have them send you information about the program. If you make over $100,000 a year net income, that's the minimum requirement, and it would be really good for
and just get on our list, because we send out a lot of great stuff. I mean, we're great believers in moving the free line. Evan Pagan's great line of moving the free line. So we're always sending out stuff that's just useful. So just get on our list.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And I'd like to, of course, acknowledge Kevin and my team and all who actually worked all day and are still here tonight. And we've got 2 days of 25K, so my team is working their butts off, and they're still here working. So I just want to acknowledge them. Thank you, guys. If any of you need any video production, my friend Dave Katz here. If you need any bio videos, any testimonial videos, or whatever, his company's called Bullseye Video. What's your website?
Bullseyevideo.com.
Bullseyevideo.com. Photography, video. If any of you want to do anything from a guy who's hung around a lot of marketing seminars and stuff, he can put together lots of different ways that you can replicate yourself in video. And I encourage all of you to get to know and meet each other and come to whatever meetup groups you can. And if you live really far away, start your own, because we have a whole curriculum at ilovemarketing.com that actually, helps you lay out, an I Love Marketing meeting, and continue to have discussions, because this is how we all learn and grow. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time. Adios.